Take a close look at this graph. It shows the birth rate of Japan, a country known for its order, its precision, and its steady, predictable progress. See the line. It climbs, it dips, it follows a logical path, until it hits one specific year, 1966. Suddenly, the line doesn't just dip, it falls off a cliff. A staggering 25% drop. In a single year, 250,000 fewer babies were born. What happened in Japan in 1966? To understand how shocking this is, you need to picture the era. This was the mid-1960s, a golden age for Japan. The country was riding high on the success of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, showcasing its miraculous post-war recovery to the world. Cities gleamed with new infrastructure. The iconic Shinkansen bullet train had just begun slicing through the countryside, and Japanese families were eagerly embracing modern life, filling their new homes with televisions, refrigerators, and washing machines. It was a time of unprecedented optimism, economic boom, and scientific progress. A nation was confidently striding into the future. And yet, in the midst of this modernity, this nationwide surge of confidence, something pulled the emergency brake on population growth. It wasn't a war. The country was at peace. It wasn't a famine. The economy was booming. It wasn't a plague or a natural disaster on a scale that could explain such a sudden, nationwide halt in childbirth. So, what was it? The answer is stranger, and far more ancient than you could possibly imagine. It was a ghost from the past. It was a superstition. To solve this demographic mystery, we have to look not at economic charts, but at a calendar. Specifically, the ancient Chinese zodiac calendar, which Japan adopted centuries ago. This calendar moves in 60-year cycles, combining 12 animal signs with 5 natural elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Every 60 years, a very specific and very feared combination appears. It's called Hinoe Uma, the year of the fire horse. In 1966 was a fire horse year. According to ancient belief, women born in this year are said to inherit the qualities of the fire horse itself. They are passionate, driven, independent, and courageous. But this passion, the legends say, can also be a curse. They are believed to be strong-willed to the point of being stubborn, with a fiery temperament that could bring misfortune and tragedy, not just to themselves, but to their future husbands and families. A fire horse woman was considered difficult, headstrong, and ultimately unmarriageable. And this belief, this deep-seated fear, is tied to the tragic story of one girl who lived 300 years before. Her name was Yaoya Oshichi. The story takes us back to the bustling city of Edo, the old name for Tokyo, in the late 17th century. Oshichi was the teenage daughter of a wealthy green. Her life was comfortable, destined for a good marriage and a quiet existence. But fate, and a great fire, had other plans. In December of 1682, the Great Tenno Fire swept through Edo, a devastating blaze that destroyed much of the city. Oshichi and her family, their home and business lost to the flames, were forced to take refuge in a local temple. It was in the solemn quiet of this temple that she met him, a young temple page, a boy named Ikuta Shonosu. For Oshichi, it was love at first sight, a pure, all-consuming passion that lit up her world far brighter than any fire. They met in secret, stealing moments together, their connection growing deeper each day. For Oshichi, this was the only happiness that mattered. But their time was running out. Soon, her family's home was rebuilt, and it was time for them to leave the temple and return to their old life. The thought of being separated from Shonosuke was unbearable. It was a physical pain, a tearing of her soul. She couldn't imagine a life without him. Desperate, her mind clouded by love and grief, a reckless idea began to form. What if another fire started? A small one. Nothing like the great blaze before. Just enough to damage their new home. Just enough to force her family to take shelter at the temple once more. Just enough to see him again. And so, on a cold night in March 1683, driven by a desperate heart, Oshichi committed the unthinkable. She started a fire. But a small flame in a city built of wood and paper is never small for long. The fire spread, causing another serious blaze. This time, Oshichi was caught. The crime of arson was one of the most severe in Edo period Japan, and the punishment was absolute. Execution by burning at the stake. At just 16 years old, Jaoja Oshichi, the greengrocer's daughter who loved to fiercely, was put to death for her crime. Her tragic story became a legend, a cautionary tale told through bunraku puppet shows and kabuki plays. She became the archetype, the very definition of a fire horse woman. A woman whose untamable passion leads to destruction. For 300 years, the story of Oshichi was just that, a story. A dramatic tale from a feudal past, but the legend lingered, its embers glowing in the nation's cultural memory. And in 1966, a year of bullet trains and color television, this 300-year-old ghost story suddenly became terrifyingly real. Modern, educated Japanese people, living in one of the most advanced societies on Earth, took this superstition so seriously that they actively decided not to have children. The fear of giving birth to a daughter in a fire horse year, a girl who might share Oshichi's fiery and tragic destiny, was so powerful it changed the demographic destiny of a nation. But how far would parents go to avoid having a daughter in this year? The answer is darker than you think. In the quest to avoid having a fire horse daughter, Japanese society turned to a solution that remains a deep scar on its collective memory. The numbers tell a story of quiet desperation. In 1966, induced abortions in Japan skyrocketed. Official statistics show a 43% increase compared to the average of the years surrounding it. Hundreds of thousands of pregnancies, many of them perfectly healthy, were terminated. This wasn't a decision made lightly. It plunged the nation into a profound ethical dilemma. Imagine the scene inside hospitals. Doctors and nurses, trained to preserve life, were being asked by terrified parents to end a pregnancy, not for medical reasons, but because of a centuries-old superstition. The requests were so frequent that they evoked a chilling historical practice known as mabiki, a term originally used for thinning out rice seedlings, but infamously applied to infanticide during times of famine in the Edo period. But to understand this, we must understand the parents' fear. It wasn't born from hatred for their unborn daughters. It was born from a terrifying love. They genuinely believed that bringing a daughter into the world in 1966 was condemning her to a lifetime of misery, loneliness, and social rejection. In their minds, they were choosing the lesser of two evils, protecting their child from a cursed fate by preventing her birth altogether. The scale of this choice reveals just how deeply the fire horse belief was woven into the fabric of society, for those who couldn't or wouldn't choose that path, and for those who simply gave birth to a daughter in 1966. The lying began. This was Japan's great falsification. The moment a child was born, a race against the calendar started. Parents, often with the help of sympathetic midwives and local officials, engaged in a nationwide act of deception. The mechanics were simple but required a collective conspiracy of silence. If a girl was born in late 1966, say December, her parents might delay registering her birth until early January 1967. Suddenly, she was no longer a dreaded fire horse. Conversely, a girl born in early 1966 could have her birth certificate pushed back to the end of 1965. This created a generation of ghost children, individuals who physically existed in one timeline but were legally shifted to another. They were everywhere, but nowhere. Their official birthdays were a fiction, a shield built by their families to protect them from stigma. This wasn't just a few isolated cases. It was a widespread social phenomenon. Neighbors would look the other way, and local registration offices would bend the rules. The pressure to conform was immense. Having a registered 1966-born daughter was seen as a mark of shame or, at the very least, extreme misfortune. So, the community conspired to erase the year itself from the lives of as many baby girls as possible. But what about the women who couldn't be hidden? The ones whose births were officially and unalterably recorded in 1966. There are roughly 1.3 million of them, the survivors of the great demographic dip. They grew up carrying the weight of their birth year. So, did the curse come true? Did they live lives of hardship and bring misfortune to their husbands? The answer is a chilling yes and no. Sociological studies conducted decades later found that women born in 1966 do, in fact, have statistically lower marriage rates and slightly higher divorce rates than the women born in the years just before and after. But this wasn't the work of supernatural forces. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. The curse became real because people believed in it. When these women reached marriageable age, they faced tangible discrimination. In the world of omiye, or arranged marriages, which were still common, their birth year was a major red flag. Potential grooms and their families would often pass them over, explicitly seeking to avoid a fire horse bride, told their whole lives that they were too strong, too independent, or dangerous Many of these women internalized it. They had to become strong and independent because society gave them little choice. The prophecy wasn't fulfilled by fate, it was fulfilled by fear. This brings us to the future. The fire horse zodiac returns every 60 years. The last time was 1966. The next time is 2026. Japan today is a very different country. It's more modern, more secular, and yet it faces a demographic crisis of historic proportions. The birth rate is at an all-time low, and the government is spending billions trying to convince its citizens to have more children. So, here is the billion-dollar question. When 2026 arrives, will history repeat itself? Will we see another phantom dip in the birth rate, or has the superstition finally been forgotten, dismissed as a relic of a bygone era? Some sociologists believe the impact will be negligible, that science and modernity have won. Others aren't so sure. They argue that deep-seated cultural beliefs have a way of lingering, whispering from one generation to the next. The story of 1966 is a powerful reminder that culture, belief, and fear can sometimes be stronger forces than biology, economics, or even government policy. As 2026 approaches, Japan isn't just facing a demographic challenge, it is facing the ghost of 1966. And it is a ghost that has been waiting patiently for 60 years. Thanks for watching, and if you want to understand the forces that shape our world, be sure to subscribe.